Hey guys, Nate here, and I wanted to talk about, I don't want to sound like a faggot, talk about Destiny's kind of like situation over the past year. It's been rocky. It's been very, very rocky. And if anyone's like kind of like in the know about video games, I guess in general, then you're gonna be hearing about a couple things about Destiny in the first place. But I wanted to go into more particular things, like kind of its lifespan so far, how things have changed over the year, and because like 15th, I think, you know, when Taken King comes out, I think is actually going to be the first year of Destiny. Like that's literally the year after the release of the original Destiny, which is actually pretty neat. So the past year, it's been really rocky from the start, and that's mainly because of a bunch of controversial topics overlaying the entire game's lifespan. First things first is, I'm pretty sure everybody remembers Angry Joe's review of the game when it first launched. A lot of that criticism was, there were certain things that were understandable and then certain things that were completely not understandable, I guess, in my opinion at least. Nothing against Angry Joe himself. I'm sure he knows his stuff most of the time, but in my opinion he uses like a lot of, I guess you could say, anger, you know, emotion behind his reviews and kind of making them biased in one fashion or the other. He made a couple main points about why Destiny was a failure at the very beginning of launch, and that was mainly, one, the lack of story. Understandable. There was not as much of a story as there should have been in the game in the first place. The grindy aspect of the game really brought it down for a lot of people. That's, again, understandable. I will continue as to why that's actually gotten better. The third bit would have to be the on-disc DLC, which is, again, a very controversial topic I will talk about in length. When the game initially came out, everyone was having fun with it. It was fun, you know, everything was great. Nobody was really complaining except for the story, which, again, understandable, but the gameplay was fun. Multiplayer was fun. You know, the strikes were fun to a point, I guess. I mean, bullet sponges can only do so much, but anyway. Now we've had a year for the game to actually take shape, to give an idea of like what the game is actually going to be and stuff like that. And that's kind of like a year ago when the game initially launched, which, by the way, I was actually there for a midnight launch for once. Again, I can understand why the story aspect would be a bit of a downer. I mean, I was a bit disappointed myself. It seemed really short. It seemed really... I mean, it was this average length for a regular shooter, but then again, this Destiny isn't a regular shooter, so I can, like... And especially, like, it was advertising, like... Advertising was a big deal at the time. Like, it was advertised to be a big, long, story-driven game, and it wasn't exactly long and story-driven. I mean, the story, it's there. The Grimoire cards, those had all the story, and it was a great, enriching story. I've read some myself, and I've watched more of those theories, videos, and stuff like that than anything. But the story there is there, definitely. Like, they built the game off that story. But they didn't implement the story well enough to actually make people take notice and stuff. The grindy aspects, I can get why people were complaining. Most people do not have the time to go out walk in circles on Venus just to get a bunch of spirit bloom, which I did a lot. I mean, I didn't really hate that aspect of the game necessarily. It was fun, actually, like, you know, using the environments to your advantage to efficiently get resources to upgrade your materials and stuff like that, upgrade your gear and stuff like that. And it was fun, but there was a certain point where it was overkill. Like, they did it to the point where, like, you couldn't take it. Like, they really were milking it right there. As far as the grindy aspect goes, grinding is very, very, very minimal nowadays. Like, they've chopped it down very, very slim. Because before, again, you had to go do a specific, like, patrol on a specific planet to get certain resources from that planet. And there were certain, like, paths that people were, you know, pointing out that you can walk in circles and actually effectively gain the resources that you need to. And that was very helpful at the time, but, like, it was still stupidly overkill for the time, for what it was actually trying to give, because you needed that resources to actually level up. That's the way the game worked. Like, the higher defense you had pretty much the higher light level you had, and that higher light level is your overall level. So that's how you had to reach max level, was by grinding pretty much. And they slimmed that down by having people use like Crucible marks, Vanguard marks to buy these resources off of vendors in the tower, which is very helpful. It was a very big change. It changed a lot of the economy in the game. It made, however, in my opinion, it didn't make leveling as rewarding as it was at the time, but it's still like, it's very much needed change though, because you couldn't, I mean, when I reached level 30, I wasn't known to be at level 30, you know? Like, everybody, at the time when I hit level 30, I think I hit it pretty early on. I think I ran it like 4 or 5 times, Vault of Glass, by the way. I ran Vault of Glass 4 or 5 times to get all the armor pieces. So after all that, I think it was just a matter of doing all the bounties and stuff with that, unlocking the upgrades, and then getting the resources for those upgrades, which is a pain. That's the hard part, is like, okay, you grinded the bounties, and then you gotta grind the resources, and then you can put it together and get max level. Like, it was really stretching the hours of the game by far, but it was still, it felt very, very, very rewarding to get level 30 at that point in time. Like, it felt, like, I remember every time we got into Crucible friends and stuff like that, they'd be like, oh, that guy's level 30. Like, it happened all the time. Like, it was, if we saw someone who was level 30, the max level, we pointed it out like he was the cool guy in the group, you know? I mean, it's I don't want to feel like I'm going all nostalgic here, but that's how it worked. That's the way the economy worked at the time. Nowadays, it's not as big of a deal to get level 34. I made my Titan like a month ago, didn't really use him for like 2 weeks, and then decided to level him up 2 weeks ago, and he's now level 34. That wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, it could have been a lot harder, I suppose. I mean, I already had all the resources I needed to level him up and all that fun stuff, but anyway, it wasn't as rewarding as hitting level 30 originally, and now it's a lot easier to hit level 34, which is good. I was about to say that's necessarily bad, but it's a rewarding factor that is completely removed from the game. Anyway, moving on. The On This DLC is the controversial stuff. First and foremost, I will be citing my sources. I have a bunch of links to put in the description sitting here in my Word document. Where do I begin? Like, okay, when the game first launched, somebody accidentally glitched to, like, I don't know, like an administrator mode or something, where he could not go into any instance in the game. Like, no story missions, no go to the tower, you can't go to patrol, you can't do anything. But however, he was able to look at all of the missions in the game as on the disc currently. And they were all placeholders. And I mean, I'll have the link to the description below, and I might show a couple like snippets on the video, but it wasn't much, and a lot of people were upset about that because, I mean, at the time, people were starting to forget about the Street Fighter characters being on disc stuff. Now, I believe that one was stupid, you know, like that wasn't placeholder at all. That was all the character right there. But with Destiny, you can tell, like, it was incomplete. Like, there was a lot of stuff to be made, there was a lot of stuff to be put together, there was a lot of stuff, like, that, again, they were all placeholder missions and stuff like that. And these were for, like, future DLC, like, both House of Wolves and Dark Below. So, all of those missions and stuff were just sitting there, like, placeholders. Again, Bungie's response to all of this commotion about the On This DLC thing was that, they all have activity names, which, again, like the video you can see, like, they all have names, which, in parentheses, which may or may not change, and we have a really good idea on what we're going to contain. They even have a placeholder nodes in the director, as you've already discovered. That's what the video's showing off as placeholder nodes. They place the objectives and stuff on the map and whatever. But neither of the expansions we've announced are finished. But people at Bungie are hard at work to complete content for our first post-launch pack. The Dark Below, as I type these words, it will be finished soon. It releases in December. Soon we'll detail it out for you so we can see exactly what we're working on. Thank you for playing. Thank you for the passion. We know you want details. We'll talk more soon. That was the initial quote, pretty much, from Bungie themselves. And they do make it clear that the activity names may or may not change, and that was a big thing. Like certain names and such were changed. Oh my goodness, a lot of names were changed, and a lot of areas, I'm sure, were changed. Like people, like even during the alpha, like were glitching into the King's Watch area, and then it was this other, the Seraphim Vault. Yeah. Anyway, those two areas got pretty much, except for Seraphim Vault, I don't think got changed very much, but I know King's Watch probably got changed a lot, because that's House of Wolves. Seraphim Vault was part of the Dark Below. From the looks of it, I mean, they were limited on how far you can actually look around in there, but they didn't change very much of that, but that might have been because it's already been designed from the beginning and stuff like that. Anyway, those two areas were not the only areas discovered by glitching into new areas. The next area I'm going to talk about is a bit of a more understandable one. The next area I'm going to talk about, people were actually getting into since the game released, which I've personally gone in there quite a few times, and it's now available open to the public, so you don't have to glitch into there. And that is the Terminus. Everybody knows about the Terminus, and that's going to be my main point of interest with talking about on this DLC, because first of all, that was an area launched for the House of Wolves, and then second of all, it changed quite drastically since it was first discovered. And how it changed is pretty noticeable. We all knew that was going to be House of Wolves content somehow. I don't know how people figured that one out, but it was, and it ended up having to be House of Wolves story area pretty much. And the thing with that is the way it changed is pretty drastic. I'm gonna try to describe it, but I'm gonna be having a couple clips or something playing right now just to show people exactly how it changed, because it changed quite a bit. And I was one of the first people to go back and glitch into it a second time after it changed again, when they first patched it to make it updated look for the next release date. I guess it was a little hint from Bungie. They could have held that back and made it a download, but anyway. Before, at launch, the way it was organized was you went up this giant tower, not tower I guess you would say, I'm just thinking of the tower, but this giant ray of light or something like that, you just get lifted up into the air it's magical and stuff like that. And then you get to the top and you're up in this high area. The area is called the Terminus, but it's actually in I forget the specific name of it, but it's in this giant tower that watches over everything on Ishtar Sink. Anyway, that's where the final boss fight is for the Taken King. I mean, not the Taken King. For the House of Wolves DLC story missions. And that's where Skolas ends up. You have to take him out and stuff. Spoiler. Anyway, it's not much of a spoiler for a game. It's pretty mediocre from launch. You can tell it was meant to be improved upon. It wasn't finished. There was stuff missing in this, in the area, and it was a known bug, but it wasn't much of a known bug. Most people who played the game a lot and were still happy with playing it a lot knew about the bug. Okay, getting in, or glitch, or whatever you want to call it, getting in that area was known by those people. The average person who would walk around and just play the game, not necessarily, they just picked it up and whatever. Those people were most likely did not know about that glitch. That's the way, the way I remember it was it looked really nice, really high up in the sky. You can see the clouds and whatever. And then you look around and there's a certain pathway to the right where there's supposed to be enemies spawning, and then you move on, there's supposed to be more areas for enemies spawning. And it was very, very Valhalla-like is the best way I can describe it. It looked very Valhalla-y. It looked like the Vex were supposed to be there. And it was the architecture and everything looked Vex. It just, everything labeled Vex. Anyway, however, that's not how it turned out whenever it actually, they improved on it drastically whenever the House of Wolves was actually launched. because they added this whole jumping puzzle. They just added it in. Like, it's not much, but it varies the gameplay just enough to make it more entertaining. Like, to get that jump puzzle across, which most people have already done with Vault of Glass, but it wasn't. I think the general layout for like the main area, you know, in which you fight enemies, was generally the same. Not much too much different, but they added a lot to it and put in a lot of details and stuff like that, and made enemy spawns a bit more like harder to notice, I guess. They do a better job of doing that, and you can tell like this has changed. They updated the look to this. They did not leave it just at that. So that's what I wanted to point out. A lot of times, like, you can go back and look at the names of each, like, strike and stuff that the dude hovered over. Like in the original, the placeholder nodes that the guy hovered over, you could see the names and stuff like that. Of the, like, the Dark Below strike was there. One, like, you know, missions and stuff were there. All those names got changed. None of them were the same. Like, if I go back, here's like a picture. If I do it. Here's a picture of the Dark Below strike before and after. Okay? Two completely different names, but in completely different, you know, times and stuff. They were just placeholder names. That's my proof here, is a lot of people got upset over nothing. What got me thinking about this topic a bit more is, like, recently Peter Moore, the CEO of EA, like, you can say what you want about EA anyway, Peter Moore says that it shouldn't be fussing over something like this. Like, something as stupid as having on-disc DLC, people are not going to be gaining anything from that. So, it's only there specifically to hold place on the disc itself, so it makes it easier for people to download. I also wanted to talk about the discussion of, like, this game having a special place in my heart, I suppose. With all the big controversial topics that this game has already covered through its lifetime so far, and such, like it's been a year, and there's been at least 4 topics in total talking about, like, again, like, all the controversial things that could have happened with this game and stuff like that. There was a bunch of crap covered. I stuck with it most of the time. I bought the DLC, like, back before Dark Below was going to come out, so it was a wild ride, I guess I can say. But what this game does not market is, like, how much memories it saved me, like, how much people I've met and, like, friends I've met through the game, and, like, people I still talk to today. Like, it may not seem like a big deal, but this game is a big community. It's pretty much the community supports it at this point. Like, that's what kept it alive, was the community, and I was part of that community. That's the thing. Like, I've met so many great people through this game that I would have never, like, decided, like, if I could go back in time and tell myself not to buy this game because it's going to be complete trash, I would never do that. Like, I've met too many people, I've had too many good times, I've had too much fun out of the game to say, no, this was a bad decision whatsoever. And that's, like, things people don't really talk about, is, like, with the game itself, it's a very interesting mix, because you got RPG elements, very heavy RPG elements, put into a user interface that makes it very easy to use for new people, for people who are into shooters and stuff. And it's also got the shooter aspect, which all the combat is based around the shooting and, you know, all that fun stuff. So it's a very interesting mix. Like, Borderlands touched on RPG and shooter aspects and stuff like that, but it wasn't online. Like, didn't kind of make itself out as an MMO. It was like, it was just an RPG with shooter elements and stuff. Oh, Destiny, it's a combination of both. Like, it's probably the closest mix you're gonna get with a shooter and an MMO put into one, because you got all the stuff that makes every MMO good, and then every shooter good, and it's all lovely mixed into one, which is people a thing people fail to talk about is that, and I find that very disappointing. But That's my personal opinion. Anyway, thanks for popping on the video. Please share your opinions below if you want to. And I will, again, have sources to everything. And all the things I've mentioned and stuff like that are going to be here. But the rest of it, if it's not cited, either ask for me to put a link, or I've just known this off, like, the top of my head, you know. I didn't, like, Street Fighter character stuff, I know about from the top of my head and whatever. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for popping in. See you next time.